Bitcoin questions and challenges our understanding of money and our understanding of how a currency should work. And it fundamentally changes how we spend and how we not spend, treat and own our money. Because once you own your Bitcoin and you can use it, and you don't have a bank getting nosy about it, or some kind of middleman taking fees or stopping payments or asking for documentation or whatnot, you realize that your money in the bank, you don't own it. It's probably not even there. And that is the first step to then questioning a lot of things, because it's not just finance. It's then you see how the media talks about Bitcoin, and you start seeing, look, there's a lot of reports about Bitcoin that aren't researched at all, that just pick some sensationalized talking points. And then you start questioning, okay, is that an honest mistake in a specific article, or is there an agenda behind it? And then you see things like, for example, there was this campaign, this Change the Code campaign, where they wanted Bitcoin to move from proof of work to proof of stake or something.
Yeah.
And they put millions of dollars in that campaign. And then you see the articles and the media reports about it, and you see, okay, there's money involved. And then you start thinking from there, if that is how they report on Bitcoin, how do they report on other issues?
Hello, guys. Welcome to the third episode of Bitcoiner, the podcast for Bitcoiners from El Salvador and to the world. Today, we have the pleasure to talk with Lina Seiche. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and welcome.
Thank you for having me. Number 3, that's cool.
Yeah, the third one. We're making little steps. Okay, Lina. So first of all, as the other previous episodes, I always wanted to meet my guests, and of course our audience to meet our guests. So first of all, can you talk about a little bit about yourself, your background? Where are you from? I know you are from Germany, but according to my extended research on Wikipedia, I didn't find anything. No, just kidding. But I know you're from Germany, but can you talk us about a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm from Germany. By research, you probably mean I don't actually live in Germany. I haven't lived in Germany for the last 9 years or so. I finished school and then I went straight abroad, and I spent the majority of that time I spent in Asia. I'm a really, really big fan of it, especially Southeast Asia. So I've lived in Malaysia, Philippines, Japan, Taiwan. Right now I'm in Istanbul, and also I split my time between Istanbul and Malta, basically. My job is making comics and making plushies, so I created the
They're
Little
very
HODLer.
famous. So
I would say he's very famous.
the Little HODLer.
I'm just a mummy, yeah. And I've been doing that for I started it. The idea started 2020 in July. Somehow I still remember that vividly, because I was living in Taiwan at the time, and it was, during the pandemic, and the general mood around the world was very stay homey. Taiwan actually was not on lockdown. The borders of the country were closed, so I was basically stuck in the country. But you could, within the country, life was very normal. Anyway, it was still you should stay home and whatever. So I was at home. And it was around the time Bitcoin was somewhere, it was over 9,000, and we knew it would hit 10,000 sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. It was the tail end of that 2018 to 2020 bear market. So the mood was very much like, okay, we know it's happening soon. We know we've made it through the hardest part. And so I had an idea for a tweet, but I didn't know how to write it. So I thought, look, maybe I can like somehow I have this pictured in my head, and I thought, yeah, I might as well. And I did a comic on PowerPoint with like stock photos, and I posted that on Twitter, not expecting much from it, but it then became my most liked tweet at the time. So that was the first time I saw, okay, look, there's something there. But then it still took me months until I actually picked this up because I didn't really think about it much anymore. But then eventually I did another one of these a couple months later that was like, similarly popular. And then I thought, okay, look, I actually have more ideas, but I can't be using stock photos all the time because first of all, it doesn't have like you need to if I want to present specific scenes it's easier if I just draw it myself. And also there's a copyright issue, right? You don't want to,
Yeah.
anyway, so I needed a character. And that's when I created the Little HODLer. It was, I got an iPad and I got just some free drawing software. Same I still use today. It was perfectly fine for my requirements actually. And, I thought, okay, I need a character, but I'm not that great at drawing people. So I did something very simple, and Little HODLer, the way he looks today, pretty much was my first attempt. And I thought,
Oh,
look,
really?
that's good enough. That's simple, and I like cute faces. So I just had him like very like this unassuming, friendly face, and just went with that. And that's where the brand was born. And
Mhm.
from there, it really got very popular, like beyond my expectations. And it became a business when I made it into a plushie. I just made a plushie because I thought, oh, that's, why not? And I posted the plushie on my Twitter, and then people started asking for it. And I did a first round, it sold out immediately. And then I thought, okay, look, let's make this into something more. And that's where that came from.
Okay.
Actually, it was a very like natural development actually, and still feels like it. And I'm very happy that there seems to be some need that was met with the Little HODLer. It's kind of the wholesome side of Bitcoin, I like to say. It's like the cuddly side of Bitcoin.
Yeah, actually, yes. It's really cute. I love it. And okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Little HODLer, but I'm really curious because you said that you went to Asia, but why Asia? I mean, the world is cute, but why that specific place? What do you like the most, or what were your motivation, or what were you looking at?
Originally, I decided that I want to go to Asia when I was 12. So when I was 12, I said I want to live in Japan. I
Mhm.
was a huge Japan fan. Like it started in Germany, we used to have this TV channel, and every German in my age group knows it and probably watched it after school. I used to watch it with my brother. I used to
Mhm.
show anime, the Japanese
Uh-huh.
anime shows like Naruto, Death Note,
Yeah, I love
Yu-Gi-Oh!
those.
I was a huge fan. That's how it started. And then
Hmm.
like it's how it is with kids. You have an interest and then you either grow out of it or you grow into it. And I really grew into it. I was so into like Japanese history, Japanese architecture, Japanese
Oh,
food and like all that. And
wow.
I got
Do you like the
so
emojis? I love emojis.
mochi.
Yeah, the
Oh,
dessert.
it's
Yeah.
Oh
So,
yeah, it's amazing. It's so good. I miss it. I miss it so much. Japanese desserts, anyway, are, in my opinion, the best in the world. But Japanese desserts and tiramisu. But anyway, um,
Mhm.
yeah. So when I was 14, I then said, okay, I want to live in Japan. I have to learn Japanese. So I like started learning Japanese while in Germany, and then when I finished school, I went to Japan. So I went to do work and travel. working holiday in Japan. I was for a few months. I lived in like a little resort town north of Tokyo, and I was flipping pancakes in a Hawaiian restaurant. So that was my first abroad experience. That was pretty hardcore, actually. Like, if you want to go abroad, but you're a bit like you find the whole thing a little daunting, that's probably not the best thing to do because massive culture shock, different language and whatnot. But it was first job ever and like completely on your own. But it was an experience. And then from there, I just kind of stayed in Asia. I never really planned for that, but I just ended up traveling around. So I spent time in Malaysia. I spent time in Manila in the Philippines. I spent time in Taiwan. And I then from there I traveled to like many other places in the area. And then like I traveled elsewhere too, but that's where I say I spent the longest amount of time, up until like 2 years ago or so. And you asked what I love about it. There's a lot of things I love, specifically about Southeast Asia. Like, I loved Malaysia. I still love Malaysia. And whenever somebody asks me, like, look, for example, a lot of Germans lately want to move abroad. They want to move to another country for reasons. Can get into that, but anyway. So normally, like a lot of them go to Switzerland because it's basically Germany but less annoying for them. And for the more adventurous ones, I always say like go to Malaysia. It's an amazing country. I don't know if have you been?
In Malaysia, not yet. No.
It's great. There's a culture of openness there, and you're very welcomed there, and you feel very like it's very warm, and it's obviously extremely different for a German like myself to go there. Culturally completely different. You very much like immediately learn that German punctuality is not very much appreciated there, but at the same time, it's like it's a much more free life. You have less of the bureaucracy that we're dealing with in Germany. You have more freedom. You have more room to think outside the box. And you have, in my opinion, some of the best food in the world because it's a melting pot of cultures. So yeah, actually, there's a very high percentage of people, especially in Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital, is expats. So you have so much good food there. I cannot recommend it enough. Once you had Asian food in the area, and then you go back to your non-Asian area, you can never like you start to appreciate the original flavors that you get. That was those are some of the reasons why I really love it there. But obviously the weather, and it's always sunny. You never need to check the weather report. So really love it there, and I really want to go back. I hope there's more like Bitcoin events over there. Going forward. They're usually very centered in North America and Europe. Lately more in Latin America, which is cool. But Asia, it's still lacking a little bit. The Bitcoin only events, I would say. But yeah, some of the stuff I love about the area.
Okay, now that you touched the subject about Bitcoin, when was the first time that you heard it, and how do you discover it? It was in the pandemic, or do you heard about it before? Or how was your rabbit hole journey, basically?
My Bitcoin story is very not glorious. I came to Bitcoin through shitcoins. So my first touching points
Also me, don't worry.
It gets easier the further away that time becomes time-wise, the easier it gets to talk about it, but still, it's not the best story. Anyway, it was 2017, so that generation, during the hype season. And at the time, I was living in Asia and I was doing marketing. I was like freelance marketing. and I was hired by a project that was like blockchain-y and all that. And I had never had any touching points with the space before, never heard about Bitcoin before. And I was just hired to do some marketing work. And I just thought, cool, some tech project, like let's do the best we can, right? And through that project and through some other projects, I started going to events and conferences and all that. And because it was that time, it's kind of surreal for me to think back to those events, because it's the kind of event where you go just to pitch your coin. So you had a bunch of people going and just talking to each other about their weather forecast, supply chain coin, and how everybody's gonna have a coin and their communities are gonna use it and whatnot. Like, it didn't make any sense at all. And with time, I realized that, and I started questioning and thinking, like, okay, look, what am I contributing here? You know, what's the point? But it took a couple events to then help me make the switch to Bitcoin. And like, obviously, I read some books like the Bitcoin Standard, and the Internet of Money is the Bitcoin Standard is a bit of a hard read, I think, especially if you're new. But the Internet of Money, I think, by Andreas Antonopoulos is a small book, very quick to read, very easy to read, especially also for non-book people. That's usually, like, I would recommend that a lot for people who are new to Bitcoin. And those things, and then meeting some Bitcoiners and going to Bitcoin conferences helped me understand the point of Bitcoin and
do you remember
blockchain.
And do you remember the moment when you thought, like, okay, this is legit? Do you remember that time or not?
Yeah,
Or was it like a process?
It was a process. It wasn't a specific moment in time, but I had like a lot of little aha moments. Like when I read the books, for example, or when I went to conferences, talked to people, for example, and then I would have these, like afterwards, you think about these things, and I think like, okay, look, for the first time, I'm questioning inflation, for example. In school, we were taught inflation is normal. Like, I still remember the chart we were looking at in school, where then our economics teacher would tell us, look, stuff gets more expensive and that's how it goes. And I remember, like, we would go to the bakery in my town, and my parents would say, look, it got more expensive, that's how it goes. And it's just like, it is presented to us as a given, or it used to be. Now, like, situation's different, but it was just like it was the way it was, and we accepted that. And you then have to actually break out of that and start questioning, which is, I think, the hardest, but the first and the hardest step in this rabbit hole journey, because we are not conditioned to ask questions about these things that we are indoctrinated with, like inflation. Obviously now it's really extreme, even in countries like Germany, that people are starting to wonder. But even then, the idea that it's, the central bank is gonna fix it and it's gonna be all right, and it's COVID's fault, is very strong. So breaking out of that is the first step, and I think, and once that happened in my head, then obviously the only way is up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing is that you had to be there. There's a certain point, I think, that you start to realize that, or start to asking why this is happening. Because for me, it was like, it was also a process, and like you, I started with shitcoins basically, and then I was making my filters, and I was reading more, watching podcasts and everything. Actually, I also read the Bitcoin Standard that I have it over there, but you can see it because my background.
We all have it somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, it was like, for example, when I started reading the Bitcoin Standard, I was starting to making a real hard question because if basically is like you say, it's like more condensed, especially if you're not if you don't read that much. But once when you start to asking the question, I started to read the Bitcoin Standard, and it was the money history, like the full story of that. And for me, I love the stories of the uh, about everything on the history, the Europe, even Latin America, everything. So, and like for example, we had in the past we have the colon, and the colony was our currency back then, and then we had the dollarization like in the early 2000. But then for us it was just like it was not the solution because uh, for example, in that time when we adopt the dollar, or if you compare it with the colon, it was like 8 point, almost 9, the devaluation that we had because our currency was worth that less, sorry, uh, compared to the dollar. So imagine when we have the dollarization, and then our grandparents that saved the money for all their lives saw the dollar, and then how it's divided by 9. I mean, even our parents, right?
Arbitrary,
So
yeah.
yeah, so for me that was the moment, and I was start to asking, okay, why this is not okay, and then just start ask more and more and more, and then I say, okay, so just so yeah, it was also for me, it was a process. And then actually it is something related. I have an idea, or more likely a question, because it's related with the Little HODLer, and now that everything is related with Bitcoin that we're talking right now, because you have a really great skill, because you make like a one comic or one post or something that is currently happening in the world related to the macroeconomics of Bitcoin, and then you post it with the Little HODLer. How is your process to condense all the information that is happening right now and just to post it? Because, for example, anything, just like, for example, the Valentine's Day that you posted yesterday, it was like really simple, but we also get it, you know, or even when the IMF said that the Bitcoin's risk didn't happen yet in El Salvador because whatever, because it wasn't the time. You just condense all the information and post it on the Little HODLer just like that, and we all get it. So how's your process to condense that much information?
I think the approach is to just go a bit like the opposite direction that you would think you go with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is very complex, finance is very complex, technology is very complex, everything's very complicated. Um, and when we think about, okay, how do we convey this? We It's very easy for everyone, me included, to then go into too much detail or start off too complicated. And if you then what I'm thinking always is I'm explaining this to someone who doesn't have much time, who maybe is a Gen Z or whatever, and spoiled by TikTok and has an attention span of 7 seconds max, and who doesn't want to read, who likes visual stuff, and who doesn't want to, it's like you're scrolling through your phone, basically. And when you're scrolling through your phone, especially if you're like on your Twitter feed or whatever, most of the time you're not that, you don't want a mental challenge at that point. So that's what I always think my comics have to fit into. So the overarching theme of everything I do is I try to keep it as simple as possible, which is actually, it's easy to forget that the longer you are in the space, because the more you're involved with Bitcoin and the more you learn about it, the more you understand, and the more you tend to assume a certain base understanding of Bitcoin. So you always have to like come back to the beginning where you kept things very simple. But there's different ways to make that work. Obviously, some of my comics are specifically, like they allude to something where then I assume this base understanding where only a Bitcoiner can get it. But some are just very basic. Sometimes it helps to break things down to their core message. So, for example, the IMF is a great example of you can, if you break away all the noise, you just look at what happened, and then you go back in time. Time is a Bitcoiner's strongest argument. It's our best weapon, is to just look at a time span and then show that. And that's usually with these institutions what I can do very easily. Because, for example, IMF said the risks haven't, what did they say? Risks haven't materialized yet. It will still happen, blah, blah, blah. And then I immediately think, okay, look, what did they say 2 years ago? And what are they saying now? Basically, they're conceding that they were wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's all. And that's then the idea that I want to show. It's not even for these things. I'm not even coming up with anything. I'm just taking what they said then versus
Exactly.
what they're saying now, and I'm making it look cute and nice. That's really all I'm doing with those things. So that is one way, right? And yeah, funny enough, the central banks, the governments, the institutions, they keep giving me these things because they keep not getting it, or not wanting to get it. That's one thing. And then for other things, it's there's so many concepts involved with Bitcoin, for example, scarcity, that then you can look at from different angles. So I can make several comics about the same concept and just focus on one aspect of that concept. My ambition is not to give you a comic and then you understand everything, or to give you a comic and then you're completely, for example, the Valentine's Day one about scarcity. It's not, you look at the comic and then you understand why Bitcoin's scarce. Obviously you don't. It's like cute, it's happy, but it gives the idea that you value things that are scarce. And then it does two things. One is it sets the mood. It like opens the Bitcoin topic up to you a little. It makes it more friendly, less scary, less complicated. And the second is maybe it piques people's interest and they're more willing to then read about it. I mean, that's how it goes for many Bitcoiners, I think, because like as also a question that obviously I often get is like, why are there not that many women and all that stuff? Because women are generally less represented in finance and tech and all that. The whole thing seems very complicated, but once you're at a point where your interest is piqued, then you want to learn more, and then you start listening to the podcasts, maybe then you start reading the blog posts, then you're out of the TikTok scroll mode and you actually want to educate yourself. And that's kind of, that's where then I pass on the I don't know, the education torch to someone like you, or someone like BTC Sessions, or someone like Preston Pish, or and that's kind of where I see my role. So I try not to complicate things. I try to sometimes just picture situations, sometimes just do something very simple, but always do it in like a good mood, because I feel like that's needed, especially lately.
Yeah, exactly. So that's your goal with the Little HODLer, to educate in a funny way.
Yeah, make it welcoming, make it warm, make it huggable.
By the way, thank you for if you want to say it, but hold on, guys, because I have a problem over here. Thank you for the mug.
I hope you like it.
Yeah.
It keeps your drinks warm. It's a thermal mug.
Yeah, actually, what other products do you have? Because I mean, you have the comics, and by the way, you recently have launched your comic, right? Like 100 pages,
My book?
right? Yeah, your book. Your book.
Yeah. I put it very like inconspicuously. I put it in the background. Yeah, that's probably together with obviously the original HODLer, that's probably like the biggest deal in my line of products, because
Hmm.
obviously he was the first, but this is like the compilation of my first 100 comics. So I worked on the like all together, meaning the comics themselves, and then the book design and the whole process of creating a book for I think a year and a half. So
Wow.
it's a huge deal for me. And I was very picky with like what the book looks like in the end. So it ended up really heavy, but it's like you can put it on your, I don't know, you put it on your coffee table, and you can, you can always like go through the pages. Again, it's the Little HODLer, so it's easy to read.
Do you have
It's
a favorite one? Like some one that you did draw that you said, "Oh, I love this one because I don't know, for any reason that you love it like a lot."
a good question. Oh my God. I think nobody ever asked me that, or did they? Anyway, I am I'm very fond of, there's two I'm very fond of, just because I notice the reaction to the comics,
Hmm.
and I get it again and again that I feel like they're very effective in what they want to convey. That one is this one.
Hmm.
It's called Zoom Out,
Now
because
I'm gonna look at it.
it's a, can you see it?
Oh, okay, yeah, I see it.
It's a one-page comic,
Uh-huh.
um,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
it basically shows the price over time,
Wow, that's
USD and
yeah,
Bitcoin, right?
okay.
I did that. Well, you can probably, based on where the new stuff, you can see where when I did it.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's
That's
very
cool.
easy because it picks up this argument that we get all the time when the price goes up. Then it's a bubble.
I love
And
that in some point said Elon FUD.
yeah, yeah, that was the time when Elon would just say Bitcoin and the price would spike, or say Doge and the price would drop, or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, that was dumb. Anyway,
Uh-huh.
that is one of the very popular ones, and kind of based on that, I really like it, and I also just like it in general.
Mhm.
Um, Another one, that's actually three. I'll give you three. Another
Okay,
one
okay,
is
perfect.
this one. It goes over two double pages in the
I know
comic.
that one. I love that one.
It's a recent one. It's basically how the no coiner, the pre-coin or the new
And the
coiner
Bitcoiners.
react to a price drop.
Guys, if you're watching this, well, if you're listening this in podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts, she's showing her book, and the one that just showed up right now is one of my favorite because it says no coiners, new coiners, and Bitcoiners, and it's lovely. It's
That's
amazing.
usually comparison that works because we all get it. Because we all were no coiners before, we were new coiners before, and now we're Bitcoiners. So it's a
Yeah.
very logical progression.
Mm.
And my first ever comic, again, it's in the book, it's like four double pages. I gave it a lot of space. So I'm just going to
Oh,
show you the final one.
okay,
But
okay.
that was my first official comic. So that one
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
So my first non um, PowerPoint comic with the actual character in there.
The one that
That
you
was,
draw on your iPad, you said.
yes, exactly. So that was that one that I posted, and I made that. I decided that is Little HODLer's birthday, so that I posted 2021, April
Mhm.
17th, and
Mhm.
that is still, I think, the most popular comic I've ever made, and that's why it's yeah, very fun. I'm very fond of it.
Yeah, congratulations. I'm really fan of
Thank
the
you.
Little HODLer. It's really fun. But before we continue on Bitcoin, I know we both are fan of something that we're both fans of
Ah!
Google. How do you describe? I know it's not related about Bitcoin or Little HODLer, but I'm just curious. So how do you discover this guy? How do you discover Grogu, and why do you love it so much?
I'm 2 years late. I like what
You are 2 years
I'm
late.
I'm 2 years late on that. Like I have no idea how that went past me. I just discovered Grogu a couple months ago, maybe.
Mhm.
That was like I don't even know how. Oh, you're so cute.
Sorry for the noise. Yeah, he's really cute.
Um, oh God, what happened? I think I was just sending a GIF to someone on Telegram, and I saw that, and it was the one where he's running, and he's so cute. And then I was like, oh my God. And I went to YouTube, and they have these Grogu compilations with just the cute scenes with Grogu, and it's
Well,
just
have you seen the show, or just or you're just fan of
I
Grogu?
haven't seen the show. I just seen the scene.
Really? You're gonna love the show. I mean, he's the star of the show.
I recently got Disney Plus, so now I
Okay.
can watch it. So I
Mm.
posted it. I posted an Instagram story and was like, "Oh my God, this is so cute." And then I got replies, people asking, "What's it like living in 2020?" I love
Yeah.
him so much. I want one. I want one.
Well, to be fair, guys, I just saw the second season. The I think it was in January of this year, so I'm a little bit late.
I
So
heard
I'm
there's
ready.
gonna be a third one, so
Yeah, you have to
yeah,
watch it. You're definitely gonna love it because I mean he's the star of the show. He's really nice. Yeah, Pedro Pascal, he's the best, but baby Yoda, he's wonderful. Okay, back to Bitcoin. Uh, okay, I prepared some questions because I had to make a little of work just to have fun. So I have a
Thank you for
prepared
putting in the
question for
work.
you. So I have a prepared question, and it says like, how do you think Bitcoin is changing the way people think about trust, money, and transparency beyond financial transactions?
That's a good question. And I think it's fundamentally changing it for every Bitcoiner. And that again, I think you only understand if you're a Bitcoiner, like without wanting to like put like like acting like a guardian of sorts or a gatekeeper of sorts. Like once you're in the Bitcoin space and you own Bitcoin and you kind of have the touch-in points, you start questioning a lot of other things. And the trust vertical is a huge one with that because Bitcoin questions and challenges our understanding of money and our understanding of how a currency should work. And it fundamentally changes how we spend and how we not spend, treat and own our money. Because once you own your Bitcoin and you can use it and you don't have a bank getting nosy about it or some kind of middleman taking fees or stopping payments or asking for documentation or whatnot, you realize that your money in the bank, you don't own it. It's probably not even there.
Yeah,
Um, and that is the first step to then questioning a lot of things, because it's not just finance. It's then you see how the media talks about Bitcoin, and you start seeing, look, there's a lot of reports about Bitcoin that aren't researched at all, that just pick some sensationalized talking points. And then you start questioning, okay, um, is is that an honest mistake in a specific article, or is there an agenda behind it? And then you see things like, for example, there was this campaign, this change the code campaign, where they wanted Bitcoin to move from proof of work to proof of stake or something.
yeah.
And they put millions of dollars in that campaign. And then you see the articles and the media reports about it, and you see, okay, there's money involved. And then you start thinking from there, if that is
Hmm.
how they report on Bitcoin, how do they report on other issues? And you
Hmm.
see how politicians talk about Bitcoin, and you start seeing all these, you start questioning a lot of things. In a way, it's very unsettling because you question the way the world is presented to you. In another way, it's kind of liberating. So as Bitcoiners, we then that's why Don't Trust Verify is so fitting
Hmm.
for the way we think, because we don't take things at face value. We start understanding that in order to have an opinion on something, we can't just take the first thing we see and adopt that. If we want to
Hmm.
actually have a confident opinion, then we have to put in the work and do some research. And I also know from my own experience that then once you have adopt that way of thinking, obviously you apply it to everything in your life. And then at some points you very quickly see the limits of that, because you cannot don't trust verify your entire life. For example, probably a big example and also a very popular one among Bitcoiners is the food debate, the diet debate. I mean, that is just something where at some point you got to say, okay, look, I don't know, because nutritional studies and food studies are so hard to like it's so hard to prove and so hard to pinpoint, because studies, if you want a clean study, you got to pick people that are same age, same sex, same weight, same whatever, put them in a room and put a camera on them and watch them all day and then feed them whatever food you're doing the study on, to then make sure that your results aren't falsified. Because, for example, studies where like eggs, for example, are regularly healthy and unhealthy, right? It's regularly good for you, regularly bad for you because of some new study that came out. But you can only, like, the study can only show you so much in that regard, because you don't know what your participant is doing outside of the study. Are they a smoker? Do they work out? Do they sit all day? Like those kinds of things. You can ask, but then there's a certain level of uncertainty involved in that. That's where you hit the limits of the don't just verify model. But being aware of that, and in many regards, not just food, that's just the example. I think being aware of that is good, because it gives you some kind of level of caution, and it's sort of this Socrates kind of way where we know that we know. Was that him? I don't know. Anyway, just I can't even quote it correctly, but just I know that I don't know anything, and then that is a level of awareness that gives you a whole new foundation to even talk about things. And again, I'm not saying every Bitcoiner is like that. I'm not saying every non-Bitcoiner is not like that. But generally, the Bitcoin understanding path has the potential to lead you to that. And that's, as I said, very unsettling in some ways, because then you think, oh my God, who can I trust? What can I believe? On the other hand, it's like it makes a lot of things clearer too.
Yeah, that's true. So before we continue with the podcast, we have like 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. But I tell you that we have a little game, and I think people that are watching the show already know what is that. This is the section that is called Hard Truths. So it's a little game. Don't make that face. It's called Hard Truths, but that are not hard. It's rock, paper, scissors, and the loser pick 3 random questions, and the winner asks the questions, and the loser has to respond the question, answer the question. So there are random questions about anything, and that are not Bitcoin related, I think. It's about anything. Yeah. And just to make it a little bit fun. I'm not that serious. So let's do it. Do you have the website? Oh, you're so competitive. I was preparing my page. I was opening.
Bring it on.
Do you have the browser open?
I have it.
Okay. Okay.
One more, huh? You'll draw.
No, draw, it means nothing. There were 3.
Really?
So yeah, I make a question, you make a question, and the other one, no one makes a question.
So do I pick a question and you answer, or do I pick a question and you ask me the question?
No, you pick a random question and I make the question, but you don't have to look at it. Just think of one question, random. Quick.
Oh God, okay.
No pressures.
What's your favorite food?
No. Ask a random question, a random number.
Oh, a random number.
Yeah.
But what is your favorite food?
And okay, so pick
A random number.
a random number. I'm going to ask it.
Okay. Okay. 31.
31. Okay. Um, oh wow, this is deep.
Oh God. Okay.
It says, I'm gonna give you some seconds to think about it because it says, what's your biggest regret in life?
Oh my God. Oh, that is deep. Oh, can I change my number?
Yeah, you can change it if you don't want to go that deep.
No, it's all right. I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail, but
No, yeah.
it's probably a regret that many people have, and I think especially girls,
Hmm.
and especially if you're like in your early 20s or whatever, and you're on your own.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes people take advantage of you, and that is a regret I have. But then it's like, I don't want to be too hard on myself because those things turn into experiences. So I think I did let some people take advantage of me um too much in the past, and that is a regret I have. But then at the same time, it's like it became a learning experience.
Yeah,
So,
it's a
yeah,
lesson learned.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. You passed the exam.
And the shit coins. That's also a
Yeah,
regret.
actually for me, yeah, that's one also.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
now
for
you say a
me,
number, right?
yeah, I don't know, 45?
45. All right. Uh,
What?
what's what's the last movie that made you cry?
Last movie that made me, oh gosh. Um, I don't know if movie, but actually a TV show I was watching, and everyone that is watching this show right now that is really popular, The Last of Us. Have you seen it?
Oh, I
No?
haven't, but I've heard of it. I've heard it's very, very
Okay,
good.
so I don't want to make any spoilers, but the third episode, and people that have watched this show probably are related with me. It's really hard, that story. It shows you a story about a couple, and that's it. Everything that I'm going to say about it. But it's really hard and it's really motivating. So it didn't make me cry, but I felt like my heart just smashed, crushed, and
Oh,
it broke into a thousand pieces because it's really hard, the story. But yeah,
um,
yeah.
right.
So,
Wow, thank
so
you
yeah.
for sharing.
Thanks to you. Okay. So let's back with the interview. We're almost wrapping up. So just two questions that I want to make you before we wrap it up. And one is, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions surrounding Bitcoin, and how do you address those people who are skeptical or misinformed about it?
Hmm. I mean, obviously, there's loads of misconceptions.
Well, the
Um,
biggest ones.
yeah. So right now, probably the most popular one is the whole environmental thing, that Bitcoin's so bad for the environment, and there's different ways to address it. Like, obviously, we're not really fans of, well, I'm not really a fan of the whataboutism. Like, yeah, Bitcoin does this, but look at the dollar or whatever. Sure.
Hmm.
Um, but there's the whole, I mean, it's the whole thing, like how Bitcoin incentivizes renewables and all that. I'm not going to get into that. Um, Another probably huge misconception is just that Bitcoin's dead again. Um, and generally, I am not the kind of person who tries super hard to convince people otherwise, because if you're set in your ways with your opinion, you don't want someone coming and talking to you about how Bitcoin fixes everything, because that actually reinforces the whole cult um, thing, that the whole cult image that is going on with Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
Um, I also know if I'm not interested in something, or if I have an opinion on something, I don't want somebody trying to change it It's gonna like I'm just gonna shut off. I'm not gonna really listen. So
Mhm.
my approach probably, yeah, my approach is always just like let some time pass and just show that I am in the space and I continue being in the space, that price doesn't shake me, that FUD articles in the media don't shake me, that I just keep doing my thing, and that Bitcoin also just keeps doing its thing. And normally what then happens is after some time, be it a couple months or years, people come back and say, look, there was something there. Let's check in on Lina. Like, oh, she's still around. Okay. Um, and then they come asking questions, and then you have a completely different starting point where you can actually talk about things. I'm actually I noticed that, and I don't do that consciously, but I'm more of a question asking person. That's also Socrates, I think. But anyway, the Socratic method or whatever, where you ask questions
Yeah,
to then help
yeah.
the other side get to a conclusion, or both sides get to a conclusion. Because I think once you start asking the right questions and thinking about things yourself, you actually realize the logic behind Bitcoin.
Mhm.
And that's how I like talking about things, because the whole fiat system is very illogical in ways and very dumb in ways. And it's actually not that hard to get to understanding that. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's my
Okay,
approach.
okay. And uh, two last questions. One is how do you see Bitcoin evolution in the next 5 to 10 years, especially here in Europe because we're in Europe. So how do you see it and the relationship between Bitcoin and the regulations with the EU regulations?
Oh, the EU is such a wild card. It is really confusing. I have no idea what they're up to. What I
Yeah.
do know is they're going to come out with a CBDC. And that is
Mm.
that they obviously don't want you using Bitcoin. So there's kind of a closing window where you can kind of escape that surveillance with Bitcoin. I don't think, and I hope not, that it would become illegal at some point. I think that would be really dumb, and I think EU politicians still have enough reason, like reason and like reasonable thinking to
Mhm.
see that that would be a very bad move from a game theory perspective. But I think the EU is going to be much slower in adopting Bitcoin than other regions. So
Mhm.
generally, Bitcoin is going to be much faster, further reaching and faster adopted in areas like Latin America, like El Salvador, where
Mhm.
the openness to it is much more open because you've seen the arbitrariness of fiat money. We are very spoiled in Europe with our currencies, that we have this naive trust in the central bank, which is fading now, but still, it's this thinking is very ingrained in us. So the openness to something like Bitcoin is is much less present. So I think it's going to be slower. I think it's still going to be there just because of the economic incentives of Bitcoin. And there's a lot of startups that are lobbying with the governments in the region to make them understand Bitcoin and to help them set the regulations and legislations accordingly. It's gonna be more restrictive. It's gonna be more controlling. There's gonna be more surveillance, and it's not gonna make sense. But I think it's gonna stay around.
Yeah.
Well, it's gonna stay around anyway. But I think the EU is gonna have to accept it in some shape or form if it wants to stay relevant.
Yeah. And actually, I was going to ask you the last question, but just out of curiosity, uh, you met Nayib Bukele, right? And
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
how was it? How it was he approachable? And how was your story
Oh
meeting
yeah,
him?
totally. No, totally. Oh, how did that happen? I messaged him with a request for a documentary or something, I think. sometime in 2021. I didn't hear back. But then, like 2 months later, he DM'd me and he said, "Look, you're in Istanbul, right? I want one of your hodlers. I'm coming there. Can we
Oh
meet?"
wow. Oh
And I
wow.
said, yeah, I'm very busy, but sure. And
Let me see my schedule.
yeah. So he was coming to Turkey to meet some investors and meet Erdogan too. And then we met. He had like a thing, like a dinner thing, and I went there with my partner. And after that, we actually sat down, had a coffee, and it's still kind of. I mean, in the end, he's a person, right? But it's
Yeah,
still,
exactly.
if I think about like the German chancellor would never do that, you know? It's like you're not gonna just have the opportunity to sit down with him and have a coffee, right? But he took the time and we sat for like 2 hours or so just talking about everything.
Yeah.
And he is very approachable. He's very smart, I
hmm
think.
Yeah.
He's very reflected, like he has a very reflective, self-reflective view on things,
Yeah.
and a very rational way to look at society and how a society is built and how a
hmm
society functions. So
hmm
I feel like he gets a lot of things. And
Okay.
I had a really, really good impression
hmm
of him. And I
Okay.
wish more politicians were like that, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you haven't visited El Salvador yet, right? Yeah.
Oh, I'm like probably the last Bitcoiner who hasn't gone. Like I have to go.
Yeah, yeah. You should visit it. You're gonna love my country. And
I'm sure I wanna go so bad.
yeah.
I will. My plan is to go this week. This week, yeah.
Oh, this
This
week, what?
this this year, one way or another. I'm gonna go there, even if I just go on vacation or something. Like eat the
Yeah.
pupusas.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I was going to tell you that you have to eat pupusas and drink our coffee is the best.
I heard of the Salvadoran coffee. Yeah, I
Mm,
gotta come.
okay, okay. And okay, so last question. What are your plans for your personal plans, or even with the Little HODLer for this year? What are your goals?
I'm working on my personal plans in my head these days. Little hodler plans are oh a lot. We're doing a lot of things. We're trying to get into more physical spaces. Like
Mhm.
I just think there's a lot of value in having the product somewhere physically where you can walk by and you see it and you get interested in it. So that's something that we're working on. Obviously, a bunch of new products, um, and a lot of things to just improve our offering. A lot of people asking for Amazon, so that's something we're working on.
Okay.
Generally conferences, lots of conferences are happening and a lot of things that are still a secret. And
Okay.
personally, I feel like I have a strong urge to go spend some time in Asia again. Like as I said, I'm like really that's my area, I feel.
Okay.
But I also really want to come to El Salvador. I've never
Go
been to
ahead.
Latin America and like how so I
Mhm.
feel like I don't know, I'm so interested. I feel like I might really it might really fit my my vibe. So I really want to see it.
Please, this is a personal request. If you go to El Salvador, you have to orange peel my mom. My dad is already orange peel, but maybe my mom, if you were watching this, maybe with the little hodler, with she should definitely take the pill and see what Bitcoin is.
Once a month, I will bring you a hodler.
Yeah, mom. No, just kidding. Um, and okay, I think that's it. And thank you very much for being in the space and talk a little bit about yourself and the little hodler and everything. Rogu, even. She's amazing. Thank you
He's
so
the
much,
best.
Lina.
Thank you.
Okay, see you the next week, guys, and have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. Ciao.